So just to introduce myself then, for those of you who don't know, I'm Chris and I work on Wholesale News. And obviously really appreciate you coming today because we've teamed up with Women in Wholesale to support the Take Control series. So this is the first webinar, but there's going to be a series throughout the summer and a lot of vlogs already hosted on our site and also on the Women in Wholesale YouTube channel. So I would signpost you towards what we're doing at the moment. There's a new one that has just gone up actually today on Zoom skills, which seems very apt. I think if you pop over, I think every week there's going to be something new. So go over there and keep an eye on our channel to see what's coming up. For today though, we're passing over to Caroline Dakin, who is running today's webinar about resilience. So that's something probably more important than ever, I would suggest right now. So I'll hand over to her, but just to signpost as well, there is a Q&A box down at the bottom where if there are any questions you'd like to ask Caroline as we go through, that'd be the place to add. She will be answering some of those questions later on, so ping anything in there. Okay, over to Caroline.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. So welcome to today's session. So this is a taster session of my longer workshop, and it's all about how to develop personal resilience. And I know some of you have seen me before, so I presented at your annual conference. So I recognise some of the names, which is really nice to see some familiar names. Shame I can't see your faces. So just looking at my screen, so first of all, just a little bit about me. So I'm a resilience trainer and speaker. So this is predominantly what I do. So I'm a resilience specialist. It's not something I've done in response to COVID. I've been doing this for quite a long time. And I've delivered interactive resilience workshops to over 5,000 people. And I've got my own business. I work with a wide variety of businesses. So as it says there, small startups to larger companies. Recently, I've been doing all my training online, of course, and the same there, working with some larger organisations right down to smaller businesses that have had to furlough all their employees. So having a look at the agenda today, I think it's important to know what we've got in store. So we've started on time. So first of all, we're going to look at resilience and stress. Then we're going to look at building physiological resilience, or we'll become clear about what that means. Then we're going to look at building psychological resilience, and then we have time at the end for a Q&A. So you're here to build resilience, and it is a session where you're going to be setting specific actions to do that. We're going to look at what is resilience. Normally in my face-to-face workshops, I'd have said at this point, don't wait until you need resilience before you start to build it. However, that horse was bolted, so to speak, and we all need resilience. So today's session is how do we get resilience and fast, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're then going to look at the blue zones. So for those who have seen me speak before, you remember the blue zones, those 5 places across the world where people seem to live forever. So they're living till 100 and beyond. Really fascinating research today. Well, I find it fascinating. I'm quite geeky like that. And they find they can boil it all down to 9 behaviours across all the blue zones, the 9 behaviours, the secrets to longevity. So we're going to have a look at that. You're then going to measure your resilience. So by 12:45, you're going to have some figures about how resilient you are at the moment. And then we're going to end by looking at some key barriers to resilience. So I'm the presenter and the trainer, and you're the participants. And I know this is a webinar. However, you are participants. I do want you to get involved. I'll be doing some questions in the chat box. You'll be doing some self-reflection activities. So there will be some interaction every 10 minutes or so. Nothing awkward, no role play. I don't really know how I do role play on a screen, to be honest. But it's just relaxed interaction, really. You're going to get out what you put in. So this is a session where I would encourage you just to really dedicate, 40 minutes to your own resilience. So as much as possible, try not to be multitasking because you're going to miss out on some of the activities. And all you need, and feel free to run off and get this now, is just some blank paper and a pen to do some of the activities. In terms of what next, I will encourage you to come up with a resilience action plan, and I will be emailing you a resource guide, so some hints and tips on how to improve your resilience as a result of what you've identified in today's session. So first of all, sensible place to start is what we actually mean by resilience, so defining resilience. And it's this. I'm not saying this is the only definition, but it's one that I use. The ability to bounce back from adversity, to work through challenges, to overcome obstacles. And that final one is the ability to respond instead of reacting. You've probably seen it in the press or read it about the corona coaster, how actually one day or 1 minute we might be fine and then not so fine and then okay again. This last one is emotion regulation, which is really tested at the moment, our ability to keep calm when everything may be going wrong around us. Now, you may be thinking about those 4 things and thinking, well, actually, I don't really think I've got much of that at the moment. Well, it doesn't matter because of this quote. It's a quote by Sheryl Sandberg, and she said that you're not born with a fixed amount of resilience. Like a muscle, you can build it up and you can draw on it when you need it. It was this realization that led me to design my resilience workshop, because I realized actually when you know what resilience is, you can train people to be more resilient. So don't worry at all if you've identified that you're not that resilient right now, because I'm going to help you get some more resilience. Now, you can't talk about resilience without talking about stress. Now, in the 1980s, a management consultant called Carl Albrecht, he identified that actually there are 4 main types of stress. It's not just one term. So I'm going to talk you through them, but I'm going to put a bit of a COVID slant on it. So the first one is time stress. So this may be some of you at the moment. You're trying to juggle work. You're trying to juggle homeschooling potentially, looking after younger children, maybe caring for relatives. So this is time stress, where we don't feel like we've got enough time to do everything. Next one is anticipatory stress. And this is where there's an event on the horizon that's causing us to feel anxious or worried or stressed. An example at the moment is the schools returning. So a lot of parents have got anticipatory stress, teachers have anticipatory stress, kids aren't so bothered really, are they? They're the ones that are sort of taking it in their stride. So there's a lot of anticipatory stress around schools and workplaces opening back up. Third one is situational stress. Now, at the beginning of lockdown, going to the supermarket was a form of situational stress for me. It was alien to me. It wasn't the way that I'd used to go shopping. I'm not saying it gave me massive amounts of situational stress, but there was some in that situation. Lockdown itself is another form of situational stress. The final one is encounter stress. And this is where your stress comes from being in proximity to upset, emotional, unwell, or people in conflict. So encounter stress is something that's experienced by our key workers at the moment who work in hospitals, on the front lines, in supermarkets. If you're in lockdown with an abuser, that's a particular form of encounter stress. So you can see the different 4 types of stress there. We've got encounter stress, situational stress, anticipatory stress, and time stress. And you may be thinking, actually, yeah, 1, 2, 3, or all 4. Now, just having a look at this diagram on the screen here, some of you may have seen this before. This is the performance curve or the eustress diagram. Now, I didn't paint a particularly good picture of stress back then, but actually there is what we call good stress. So eustress just means positive stress, which is this zone here. Either sides of the eustress zone are not great places to be. So the distress zone could be when we have too much time stress, too much situational stress, and it just becomes too much. The left-hand side is where maybe some of your furloughed colleagues are at the moment, where they feel like they don't have much of a purpose, motivation, because work is actually really good for us. I'm working or training a lot of furloughed employees, and they're actually struggling because they're down here. Now, the aim of building resilience and the aim of my online workshops at the moment is to keep people in this eustress zone here, this sweet spot. So how do you build resilience? So how do we keep in that eustress zone when we build resilience? Now, this is the framework that I'm going to go through with you today. So in the activities, you're going to be self-assessing where you are for each of these areas. Now, I call these protection factors because they will protect you from stress. That's why they're called protection factors. Build resilience, protect you from stress. You've got 2 sections here. We've got the physiological protection factors, which are sleep, exercise, and diet. Now, you may be looking at that thinking, well, tell us something we don't know. It's not exactly groundbreaking stuff, and I completely agree with you. However, it's common sense, but it's not always common practice. If you don't sleep, you don't move your body, and you eat rubbish, you're not going to be firing on all cylinders. It's so important. The right-hand side are your psychological protection factors. This is how we build resilience in the brain. And these are the ones that you're going to self-assess on shortly. We've got self-belief, positive outlook, purpose and direction, adaptability, problem solving, challenge orientation, emotion regulation, and the final one is support seeking or asking for help. Now, For those of you who came to the annual conference, you'll have played this game where everybody in the auditorium stood up. We can't do that today, and I can't see if you're doing it anyway. So I'm going to have to trust that you're playing along at home or in the office there. So all I want you to do at this point is just raise your hand. Now, if you are doing what I show you on the screen, keep your hand up. If you're not, you need to put your hand down. Yeah, and you can't be back in the game. So the first one is keep your hand up. I'm trusting that you're playing along here. Keep your hand up if you've had between 7 to 9 hours sleep for at least 10 out of the last 14 nights. Okay, so 7 to 9 hours is what's needed for adequate brain health. If you haven't got that, you're out. Unfortunately, it's a harsh game, but you can't come back in. The second one is keep your hand up if you've worked towards a written down goal in the past 2 weeks. So have you worked towards a written down goal in the past 2 weeks? Keep your hand up if you have. Keep your hand up if you've adapted to a new situation in the past 2 weeks. So have you done something new? Have you adapted to something? The next one, are you support seeking? Keep your hand raised if you've discussed something that's worried you with at least one family member or friend in the last 2 weeks. Keep your hand up if you've been physically active every day over the past week. The next one, keep your hand up if you've eaten junk food on 2 occasions or less in the past 2 weeks. Last one will get you. Keep your hand up if you consumed less than 14 units of alcohol in the past 2 weeks. Okay, so I'm hoping that there's some people behind their cameras there that have still got their arms raised. You can put your hands down now for those of you who are playing. I'm going to show you a series of images now, and it is linked to what we've been talking about. And as I show you the images, at the end, I'm going to ask you what you think the common link is. I'm going to ask you to write it in the chat box. For those who've seen this before, don't spoil it. Just keep it to yourself if you can remember. So the first one is Chernobyl. So this was the site of the nuclear disaster. So there was an explosion and it killed many people as it happened. And to this day, people are still being diagnosed with radiation-related poisoning. Next one is the Challenger rocket disaster, exploded seconds after takeoff and killed everybody on board. Third one is the Exxon Valdez oil disaster. So the ship crashed and spilled many litres of oil and devastated the wildlife of the area. And the final one, we're looking at this person at the end, and this is Moritz Urquhart, and he was an intern. So he was a graduate intern at a bank in London, and he was found dead in his apartment just a couple of months into the internship. So we have the graduate, we've got the oil disaster, we've got the Challenger, and Chernobyl. So just have a think, what do you think the link is? And just write it in the chat box. So what do you think the link is between all those 4 images? And it is something that we've talked about before. So just see if you can have a guess. Jodie's straight in there. Good guess, Jodie. Situational stress. It is part of it. It is part of it. You're close, but it's not the exact answer. So anyone else? Disaster, nearly. Well, it is disaster, obviously, but it isn't the particular one I'm after. Laura's getting closer now with all disasters could have been prevented. Yeah, but it's due to something. Claire's in there with lack of communication, but it's not quite. Pressure, we're sort of getting a little bit nearer. Accident didn't intend to happen. You're very close, but you're not quite there yet. So I'm going to reveal the answer. So the answer is lack of sleep. Okay, so the answer is lack of sleep, and I'll tell you why. So Chernobyl, they were doing split shifts for a long time, and that means that the workers who were operating the plant were not getting adequate rest time and were making poor decisions. I don't know about you, but I do not make good decisions when I'm really tired, and neither were the workers at the plant there. So it was a contributory factor, was the tiredness of the plant workers. The Challenger, the main reason was this corrosion of the O-ring. However, a contributory factor was the fact that a long time, so months before the launch, the people responsible for the launch were not getting enough sleep. They were missing stuff that, had they been fully rested, they would have picked up, and that was a contributory factor. This was more straightforward. Due to inadequate crew rest, the person who was driving the ship fell asleep at the helm, and that was the cause. Inadequate crew rest, and basically crashed the ship. The final one, now this is Moritz Urquhart at the end here. So he was trying to impress his bosses at the bank where he worked as an intern. He wanted a full-time graduate job, and he was pulling all-nighters, and basically that led to fatigue-induced epileptic fit, and he was found dead in his apartment. And when they phoned his parents, his mother, so they lived in Germany, first thing she said to the police officer was, "It's overwork. I know exactly what it is because I told him about it just a few weeks before." These are just 4 examples. I could give you 104 quite easily of where lack of sleep has led and been a contributing factor in some major disasters. Now, it's not good enough just to say, right, that's it now, early night tonight for me, because actually good sleep starts from the minute you get up in the morning. So at this point, I need you to get a pen and a piece of paper. And as I go through these sleep habits or sleep hygiene factors, if you do them, I want you to give yourself the points, okay? So the first one, give yourself 1 point if you read fiction before you go to bed on most nights. Now, it's got to be fiction. So I'm thinking like a novel, not like, you know, Wholesale Weekly or Ambient Fortnightly or whatever it is that you read. I'm thinking, you know, an actual novel. The next one, give yourself 1 point if you sleep in a cool room, preferably with a window open. This is not that popular for some people who like to sleep with, you know, 7 duvets on, but actually, if we're too hot, we wake up. Give yourself 2 points if you don't use your phone for 30 minutes before bed. This links into that light. So the more blue light you generate in your brain, you give your brain, it doesn't produce the sleep hormone. So that's the link. So your brain thinks, well, it's not nighttime yet because I've got all this light in my face, so I'm not producing the sleep hormone. However, give yourself 2 points if you use your phone, but you use the blue light feature. So it's called the night shift settings on an iPhone, and you can actually turn down the light. Next one, give yourself 2 points if you actually use your phone to do something to help you sleep. So technology and phones, they do get a bad rep, but actually there are some things on there like meditation apps, the Calm app, Audible, a podcast that actually can help us to sleep better. Give yourself 2 points if you quit caffeine after lunchtime because it can stay in the body for up to 12 hours. That's why lunchtime is a nice cutoff. 2 points if you exercise for at least 60 minutes a day. So exercise to sleep longer. 1 point if you dim the lights 30 minutes before you go to bed. Again, linked into that production of the sleep hormone. 1 point, go to bed at roughly the same time every night, including weekends. So often we give ourselves this social jet lag where we have a normal bedtime in the week and then at weekends, I mean, probably not so much at the moment because our lives have been a little bit topsy-turvy. So add up your points, everybody. Maybe you're not rooting for the calculators. Maybe you've not got so high scores on this. So 10 to 16 points, excellent sleep habits, well done. 4 to 10 points, okay sleep habits. And less than 4 points, very judgy that, isn't it? Poor sleep habits. Now you may be thinking, well, actually I do all that, but I still don't sleep because I wake up in the night. And this is something that is really common in lockdown. We've got all this stuff going on in our mind, you know, we're just trying to process it all. And often our brain wakes us up in the night. If that's you, one thing that you can try, and I don't know what the technical term is for it, but I just call it a brain dump. Not a very nice term, I know. What you do is just before you're going to go to bed, just for a couple of minutes, just brainstorm, just write down what's going on in your mind. So just literally, you know, everything that's going on in your mind. What happens is your brain can then start to relax. The reason why you often wake up in the middle of the night, your brain's trying to remind you not to forget things. So don't forget about this, don't forget about that. Not that useful at 3 a.m, is it? So actually to preempt that before you go to bed, practice emptying your brain. I've had some really, really good feedback from people that this has massively helped them recently. So we're going to do some self-assessment now on our physiological protection factors. So I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to whip up this handout that's in front of you now. So not the most aesthetically pleasing handout, but you know, we have to do what we can in COVID times. All I want you to do down the left-hand side, sleep, exercise, you'll see alcohol's appeared there, sneaked, hasn't it? So alcohol is part of diet, really important that when we're thinking of our diet, we're thinking of alcohol as well. Along the top, I want you to write current and required. Okay, so I'll just give you 10 seconds to whip up this handout. Okay, so we're going to look at sleep first of all. So I want you to think about, on average, how many hours a night are you getting for your sleep? Okay, so At the moment, I'm doing all right, actually. I'm getting 7. So on average, I'm getting around 7. In the required column, this should be a number between 7 and 9. So for brain health, we need between 7 and 9. I actually need 8. If I get 9, I actually feel a little bit groggy. So you have a think about, what do you think your ideal number is, okay? Next one is exercise. So give yourself, or write down how many hours a week you've got exercise in the past week. So I've been doing an hour a day roughly, so that's 7. And the required is, how many do you think you need? I probably would like a little bit more cardio. So I'm going to say that my required one is 9. So I'm getting 7 a week, or did in the last week, but actually I would like 9. Next one, this is where you probably need your calculators. So I want you to calculate how many units you've had in the past week. Now, if you're not too sure what a unit is, no problem, I can help you. So a bottle of wine has around 9 units. So one bottle of wine is 9 units. So a glass of wine is like, 2.6. A single measure of shot, like gin or vodka, is 1 unit. So just be aware of when you're pouring it at home, you're probably not measuring it. So it might be, more than just 1 unit. A bottle of beer is 1.5 units. Yeah, so 1.5 units for a bottle of beer. So you get the picture. Now, I want you to, I'm going to trust you, don't worry. I'm not going to ask you to put your units in the chat box or anything embarrassing like that. So just write down how many units you had in the past week. Obviously, because I'm being recorded, it's definitely 14. And then in this required column, for men and women, the limit is, or the recommended unit is 14 actually for men and women. Used to be a lot more for men. It used to be a lot more anyway, but now it's 14. So actually 14 is only a bottle and a half of wine, isn't it? So just write down, if you don't drink at all, obviously it's going to be 0, isn't it? So it might be 14 or 0. The last one is healthy diet. So just have a think, what percentage of the week are you getting a healthy diet? So I think at the moment I'm going 70% healthy, 30% not so healthy. But my required, I'd actually like it to be 80-20. So 80% healthy and 20% having a bit of a cheat. So I'll just give you a minute, a bit less than a minute, just to think about where do you potentially, just to fill in this. And then when you've done that, I want you to write anything that's strikingly obvious in the chat box. So maybe you've identified that actually you need more sleep. Is it exercise for you? Is it that you need to moderate your alcohol? The reason why alcohol's on there, by the way, is I'm not because I'm the fun police. But actually, if you drink a lot, you're not sleeping as well. You're less likely to exercise the next day, and it does affect your diet. It also depletes our serotonin, our feel-good hormone. So alcohol in moderation, fine. But the reason it's on there is a link to resilience. Okay, so we've got in the chat box now, exercise, diet, sugar, sleep, alcohol, better diet and exercise, more sleep. So we've got a real mix here, actually. Alcohol, yeah, I think I should get more units because I've got a toddler. Apparently you don't. Everybody gets 14, regardless of situation. Diet, alcohol, sleep more, and exercise more. So a real mix there. Now, exercise is massively linked to stress. You've probably heard of cortisol, the stress hormone. So there is some studies that show that actually if we exercise, we're going to reduce and burn off that stress hormone cortisol. So what we're going to have a look at now is the blue zones. So do you remember what I said about the blue zones? They seem to live forever. So you can see some examples. We've got this woman here. She's still doing the crow. She's a centenarian. I struggle with the downward dog, and she's just doing this every day. And they're out there living lives. So they're not just old for the sake of it. They're out there and thriving in society in their old age. This is the Japanese Blue Zones. They have a Blue Zones girl band. So again, this is what I mean by out there loving life. This is the Blue Zones version of Little Mix or the Spice Girls or whoever your girl band of choice is. So let's have a look at the 5 blue zones. You've got Loma Linda, California, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa in Japan. Nothing in the UK, unfortunately. as yet. You'll see as well, you probably noticed that they all tend to be in really hot countries. That's like glossed over in the research. So the research found what I alluded to earlier, this Power 9 concept. So no matter whether there was a centenarian in California or in Japan, they were doing the same 9 behaviours. The research also found that longevity, or how old you live, is down to 20% genetics but 80% lifestyle factors, which blew my mind actually. So it's just 80% genetics, sorry, 20% genetics but 80% lifestyle factors. So let's have a look at these Power 9 behaviours. What are they doing? Sense of purpose, really, really important. The majority of them still worked. Work, well, the right work is actually really good for us. So sense of purpose, they had a reason to get up. It might be a job. It might be to see their great-great-grandchildren. Might be a hobby. Daily stress relief, this is so important. So every single day they factored some form of stress relief into their day. So that might be a siesta, meditation, yoga. Just have a think at the moment. Are you doing this? Are you factoring some form of stress relief into your day? 80% full. So they basically, interesting one, they stopped eating when they were no longer hungry. You know, so I doubt they had many all-you-can-eat buffets while they were sort of, you know, eating till they were full to the gills. They practiced mindful eating. Faith-based community, interesting. Not so much to do with the power of God, but that support network and having people around them to call on when they needed. Wine at 5, you'll all be adding this one to your action plans, I'm sure. They were moderate drinkers, but it was the way they did it. You know, it wasn't, you know, a bottle of gin on their own on Friday night while watching Netflix, surprisingly. It was a couple of glasses of high-quality alcohol with some friends, with a couple of nibbles. So it was like very social. I don't know whether it counts still doing it over Zoom at the moment. Moved naturally. They didn't exercise, they just moved a lot. So probably a bit like we've gone back to at the moment. So walking, cycling, gardening, that's all blue zones exercise. Right tribe, this is important. So they hung around with positive people. They didn't hang around with a lot of mood hoovers. If anybody knows a mood hoover, you know, one of those people that when they walk in the room or they appear on WhatsApp, it's like a dimmer switch has gone off and they instantly, you know, just suck all the joy. Semi-vegetarian, they ate meat but only twice a week. And the final one is family first. Though actually they often lived intergenerationally, if not in the same house, very, very near to them. So just have a look at these Power 9s and just in your own head, just think, which ones are you doing? You might all go to instantly to wine at 5. You know, are you getting your daily stress relief? Who are you surrounding yourself with? So I'll just let you have a little bit of a think about that. So we're going to move on to measuring your psychological resilience now. So we're going to move to the right-hand side of the model. So I just need you to get a pen and paper at the ready, please, because what I'm going to ask you to do is this just to really important to let you know that if you come to one of my face-to-face workshops, I profile people in their current levels of resilience using a psychometric tool called the Resilience Questionnaire by PSI. I can't do this for you all today, obviously. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is self-assess where you think you are for these different levels of psychological resilience. So the first thing I want you to do is just write down the word self-belief. So just write down the word self-belief. Now, I'm going to ask you to score yourself out of 10. As a guide to the scoring, if you score yourself 1, 2 or 3, you're saying that's a development area. 4 to 7 is average, and 8, 9, 10 is a strength. So you're saying, actually, that is a real strength for me at the moment. I want you to think about your scores now, yeah, at the moment. So in the times of COVID, don't think about, you know, back in February or January. Think about now. So first thing, write the word self-belief, and I want you to score yourself out of 10 for how much self-belief you have at the moment that you can get yourself through this challenging situation, the challenges that COVID will bring. So maybe you've experienced lots of challenges already and you've dealt with them. So maybe your self-belief is quite high, or maybe you're thinking, I don't think I can do this much longer. Do I want the new normal? So maybe your self-belief in terms of your ability to get through the current situation is low. So give yourself a score out of 10 for your self-belief. Next one, just write the word optimism. And I want you to give yourself a score out of 10 for how optimistic you are currently feeling. So just to let you know what an optimist is somebody who understands the reality of the situation but believes things are going to be all right in the end. So where are you on that scale? Do you think, you know what, it's difficult, but it is going to be all right in the end? Maybe actually we can take some stuff from this, some positive stuff. Or are you down the lower end? Are you quite pessimistic at the moment about the future and what that may bring for you, your work, your life? Next one is purposeful direction. So just give yourself a score out of 10 for how focused you are on achieving goals at the moment. So I don't just mean work goals, but I mean personal goals as well. So have you set yourself some challenges? You know, maybe you've said, I'm going to exercise every day. So give yourself a score out of 10 for how focused you are on goals and targets. Next one is adaptability. So give yourself a score out of 10 for how well you feel you've adapted to the COVID-19 situation. You know, maybe you have adapted really well, you've changed a lot of things in your life, and now actually you're really getting into your swing, or maybe you're down the lower end. You're still feeling quite frustrated. You just want things to go back to the way they were. Next one is ingenuity, and that is just another word for problem solving. So give yourself a score out of 10 for how good you have been with coming up with creative ways of doing things. So, you know, creative ways of engaging with still seeing relatives, or keeping in touch with the team, or, you know, maybe you've tried like a home exercise app. So I'm talking about work and home here. So a score out of 10 for your creative problem solving. Next one is challenge orientation. So just write the word challenge orientation. Give yourself a score out of 10 for how much you've stepped outside your comfort zone recently. So 8, 9 and 10 would be I've challenged myself, I've done things differently because I've been required to. Or down the lower end of the scale would be, no, I've been staying in my comfort zone, I've got enough on my plate at the moment, thank you. It's not the time for challenging, which is fine, isn't it? Next one is emotion regulation. So give yourself a score out of 10 for how calm you have kept in the recent COVID-19 times. So maybe you've kept really calm when everybody around you hasn't, or maybe you're down the lower end of the scale where you've been feeling quite anxious. Maybe you've had emotional outbursts. Maybe that corona coaster has really resonated with you, and you feel like you're on it, you know, every day, every hour, every minute. The final one, just write the word support seeking, and give yourself a score out of 10 for how good you have been recently, reaching out, asking for help, sharing when you've had a bad day, and just being really open about your feelings. So down the lower end would be, you know, you keep everything to yourself, you maybe bottle stuff up, you wouldn't dream of talking about your feelings, so you get the picture there. So you should have a series of scores. Now, obviously, this is a self-assessment. If you complete the resilience questionnaire, you're going to get a more accurate measure, aren't you? But this is your self-assessment, and you know, it's still valid. And you probably, some of you can think, actually, I do think this is quite accurate for me. So just in the chat box now, I want you to write down which of these 8 areas do you feel like you need to work on at the moment? So maybe there was something that really stood out. Actually, if I work on this, then that would improve my resilience. So just in the chat box, just have a think about which of these areas do you need to work on. I'm just looking at Tracy's comment from before, which was diet too much bacon. Yeah, it's that bacon, isn't it? My 9-year-old keeps baking. I'm like, stop baking. Obviously, I don't say that so harshly. Angela, straight in there. Purposeful direction, support seeking, emotion regulation, support seeking, support seeking. Oh, there's a common theme here. Emotion regulation again. Purpose and direction. So we've got a real common theme of support seeking, emotion regulation, and purpose direction. Be more optimistic. Easy for me to say, or maybe not. Self-belief. So actually a real mix there. Sandy's back in there with emotion regulation, self-belief, optimism. Yeah, the same ones sort of coming up, which is really interesting. Okay, I'm glad that you've identified support seeking, because if you can crack that one, this was my real low score for a long time. If you can crack this one, it's the best thing you can do for your mental health, just realising it. So what we're going to have a look at now is some of the barriers to building resilience. Now, the first barrier is negativity. I mentioned this when I talked about the blue zones. This is a mood hoover. So some of you, you know, maybe unfortunate enough to live with a mood hoover, hopefully not. You may have, you know, when you're back in the office, or if you're currently in the office, worked with mood hoovers. Or, you know, you may have a mood hoover on Facebook or Twitter. That's where they hang out, isn't it? There's a lot of mood hoovers on Twitter. The reason why I'm talking about this concept of negativity and mood hoovers is because of this, basically. So there's a positive psychologist called Barbara Fredrickson, and she did some research, and she found that actually for every negative thought, we need 3 positive thoughts for actual stability. Now, if you think about this, if you're constantly with a negative person, or you're constantly absorbing too much negative news, this is going to impact this. So if you read or watch or listen to 3 negative news stories, you then need to go away and do 9 positive things, don't you? You need to stroke a cat, smile at somebody, you know, have a positive interaction with someone you live with. And we possibly don't do it. Maybe go away and read another 3 negative news things. So my probably key message here is just be really careful about what you're absorbing at the moment. There's a lot of negativity around. I just used to watch The Update as my consumption of news, and that worked for me. And I sort of closed everything else off. So just have, you know, I'll ask you to self-reflect. Are you getting this 3-to-1 at the moment? Could you be doing anything differently so you're getting a bit more positivity? Now, one thing that you can do to instantly increase your optimism and those positive emotions is practice gratitude. So what I want you to do on a piece of paper, I want you to write down 6 things that you're grateful for at this moment in time. You know, don't write all different names of your children, by the way, that's cheating. I'm not saying you're not grateful for them, but try and vary it, try and mix it up. So just write down 6 things at this moment in time that you're grateful for right now. Just give you 10 seconds to do that. And keep going. I know it's a hard one if you're not used to this, but just keep going till you get to 6. Okay, and when you've done that, can everybody share one thing they're grateful for in the chat box, please? So just one thing they're grateful for in the chat box, just one of your 6. Okay, Harley's kicking us off with good health, roof over my head, brilliant job, family, amazing colleagues, good stuff. Where I live, community spirit. Yeah, community spirit's a really good one at the moment. Outdoor space, Kirsty, yeah, completely agree. Family. Nice neighbours, yeah, it makes lockdown so much easier. Good family, my upbringing. Happy marriage with supportive husband. Is he in the background, Gemma? You're trying to get a few points. My home, support network, friends, the outdoors, job, takeaways. That's from Elliot, takeaways. That's definitely a good one. Motivation to be healthy, no money worries, dog, more of a focus on family. Prosecco. Elliot's, just to let you know, Elliot's done takeaway and Prosecco so far. You can see where Elliot's mind is going. You can tell she's got some more children. My garden, supportive housemates, a wedding anniversary today, Gemma. Ah, right, that's why. So you've got your husband on your mind, Gemma. So it's your wedding anniversary today. That makes sense. And yoga from Kirsty. So really good stuff. Now, practicing gratitude is just that, it's a practice. You know, you wouldn't expect to just have a shower once a month and expect to be smelling like a rose, would you? It's the same with gratitude. You have to do it on a regular daily basis. That's how it works. Now, if you can do this as a regular habit, what I suggest, something to make this easier, is to hook it on the back of an existing habit. So some people do this when they're brushing their teeth in the morning. Something that I hope everyone does. I can't see you, so I can't see your teeth, but I'm assuming that you all brush your teeth. So some people do it when they're brushing their teeth in the morning. They just think about 3 things they're grateful for. I do it with my 9-year-old before she goes to bed, because she always goes to bed eventually, and she always reminds me, oh, we're not 3 good things. So try and think about how you can get this gratitude habit. You know, maybe it's on WhatsApp with a friend or a family member. Get somebody else involved. Now, another barrier is lack of goals and direction. So I'm just going to tell you a short story which really brings home the importance of having goals and a purpose and direction when it comes to building resilience. So some of you may have read the book Eat, Pray, Love, or seen the film. The film had Julia Roberts as the main character. True story. So the author, on paper, she had it all. You know, really good job, nice flat in New York, husband, you know, enough money to do what she wanted with, but she just wasn't happy. And one day she decided that actually she was going to jack it all in, literally left a husband, left a job, left a flat, and she went to travel the world, and she went to find herself. And that basically is a story that is told in her book of her spiritual journey. And the book was massive. It was a bestseller and hence got made into a film. And she used to do these book signings, and her audience were American women, and they'd come up to her and they'd say, love that book. However, I've got kids, I've got a partner, I've got bills to pay, I've got a job, I've got to look after my elderly mother. So I can't just jack it all in and travel the world like you did. So I liked the book. It was a bit of escapism, but I can't really see how I would do that too. And the author, Liz, knew that what they were saying was completely right. They couldn't just jack everything in, but she didn't know what to say to them in response to this until one day somebody came up and said, I absolutely love that book. It reminded me of my own mother. I was like, all right, tell me a story. So, well, she had 5 kids, and the youngest was just 6 months old, and the eldest was 10. And her husband left her for another woman and was never seen again. And he never saw her again. He never gave her any money, and she had to bring those kids up all on her own, and it was tough. But the day he left, she took $1 and put it in a coffee jar at the back of a wardrobe. And every single day, no matter how tough those days were, and they were really, really tough. Imagine bringing up all those kids on your own. Every day she scraped together that $1 and put it in the coffee jar until the day that the child that was just a baby at the time when her husband left her, flew the nest. She went to the back of the wardrobe, took all the coffee jars out, took them to the bank and cashed them in for a round the world ticket. And the point was, she couldn't do anything when her husband left her, could she? But actually, every single day she had that goal, that purpose, that direction. And that's why goals are so important. They fuel us. They give us resilience to get us through the difficult times. Now, traveling the world, that's a big goal, isn't it? What I want you to think is, what are you looking forward to doing when we eventually have more of the lockdown eased? So what sort of things are you looking forward to doing? Just write it in the chat box. Is it, seeing somebody you haven't seen for a while? Maybe it is travel. Maybe you are wanting to travel the world. Maybe it's a big night out with your friends. So just in the chat box, I want you to have a think about what sort of things are you looking forward to doing when the lockdown ends. I'll just give you a minute to do that. Oh, straight away in there. Nicola's Manchester for cocktails. Okay, great. Nicola's from my hometown, so yeah, a girl after my own heart, like your cocktails. Lynn, spending time with family, brilliant. Visiting parents, family, friends, see mum and dad. Pub and Lake District visit, good one. Fitting a walk in there, Harley, or is it just for the pub you're there for? Cocktails and dancing, very specific, Laura. Got to have the dance, haven't you? Big night out. Can see what you'll all like to do in your spare time. Night out, spending time with my family, going to my favourite pub, housewarming party from Esther, brilliant. Travel, seeing family and friends, weekend break, going on holiday, seeing my sister-in-law who's currently shielding. Yeah, mine too, Ella, I'm looking forward to that. Big housewarming party. Taking husband to Pizza Express. It's very specific, Elliot. Travel, bottomless brunch. Oh, that sounds good, Emma. Bottomless brunch. Celebrating a friend's pregnancy, nice restaurant, new job, shopping. Tell you what, you're not messing about, are you? I've never had a group with quite a clear idea of what you're looking forward to doing. Good stuff. Now, just something I want to end on is this barrier 3, which is another barrier to resilience and a really key one at the moment, which is worrying about what can't be changed. Now, some of you may have seen this diagram before. It's by Stephen Covey, or Covey, I never really know how you pronounce it. And he basically said that actually you've got these 3 zones. You've got no control, no influence, influence and control. Now, things that are in our circle of no control and influence are things like when lockdown ends, what other people do, the past, the weather. Influence, things that fit under here. We can influence other people, and I suppose we can influence them positively or negatively, can't we? We can be the mood hoover, or can be that person who supports someone, who is there for them. In the circle of control, you have all the things that you are entirely in control of. So things like how much you exercise, diet, alcohol, whether you practice gratitude, whether you set goals, whether you come up with solutions to problems, whether you put the effort into doing that, whether you ask other people for help, whether you practice positive thinking. Basically all the things that we covered in the resilience framework. Now, this is something that I found on Facebook, actually, or a other social media platform, and it's Covey's Circle of Control, but it's directly linked to COVID-19. So around the outside, these are all the things that you can let go, instead trading them in for these things in the middle which you can control. And the point of this is that we only get 24 hours in a day. We all get the same. And people who are going to get through this difficult time that we find ourselves in are going to be the ones that spend the majority of the time here and less time here because we only get 24 hours in a day. Okay, so it's not something we're going to have time to do today, unfortunately, but what I would encourage you to do is just think about what actions or goals can I set to build my resilience. And I'm not, thinking massive ones like traveling the world. I'm thinking more like not using your phone 30 minutes before bed, or cutting out caffeine, or going for a daily walk, or practicing gratitude, or opening up to my friend about how I'm feeling. It's these sort of small but consistent goals that I'm talking about. So just be having a think now, what sort of things could you do to build your resilience? Now, I do have a website. On my website, I have a couple of blogs. On those blogs are basically some hints, some tips, some books, some podcasts, some apps, all about how to build your resilience. If you want me to send you my quarterly resilience blog, then sign up on my website, but all the past copies are actually on there. So maybe you're thinking, actually, I'd like to use an app to develop my resilience, or I fancy getting into podcasts. If you have a look at my website, you will see lots of resources there for you. So my website address is there, and after this session, I will send you, Elliot will send you the slides from today's session, and also this, which you can see here, which is just my resilience development resource guide. So things like TED Talks, books and apps. I'm a bit of a personal development geek, so I've got lots to recommend. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen there, and I'm going to hand over to Chris, who is potentially going to take some questions. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, so I guess the Q&A box then is down on the toolbar. It'd be great if any of you guys have got any questions that you'd like to ask. If you want to send it into there, and we'll pose them to Caroline. I guess in the meantime, while we're kind of waiting for you to send some of those over, I guess you've given us some resources there that you can help with, but are there any books that people can look to buy?
Yeah, probably one of the first books that I looked into around mindset, and it's a series actually, and it's called The Art of Being Brilliant. I don't know if anybody is familiar with them. They do them for kids, so they have like an Art of Being Brilliant teenager. But the very first Art of Being Brilliant book, when I read that, I sort of realised about how much we have a choice in terms of our optimism. That book basically is where I've stolen the concept of mood hoover from. They probably stole it from somewhere else, but that is basically where it comes from. So it's called The Art of Being Brilliant, that one. And then one more around stress is by Dr. Ranga Chatterjee, and it's called The Stress Solution. And he actually estimates that around 80% of GP consultations currently are due to stress. And his book is fascinating. So that's Ranga Chatterjee, The Stress Solution, and The Art of Being Brilliant, probably my two go-to books.
Excellent. So we've had a few questions come through. So we'll go to the first one from Becky, which is a really good question, actually, that during the COVID pandemic, because as you say, there's a bit of a roller coaster going on, have you found that there are any challenges that you've struggled with as you've come along, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think, as probably a lot of you on the call, so I have a toddler and an older child, and they have very, very different needs. So that has been, just trying to keep the toddler out a room when you're doing an online session is probably a challenge in itself. Very, very early on in the crisis, all my work was face-to-face. So I had a full calendar right up to next March, all gone. Literally wiped out straight away. So that was a bit of a shocker. But I suppose I just quite early, I just got on with transferring everything online and making sure it works online, and it's not just, a face-to-face workshop that I've just put on a PowerPoint, and just trying to be as creative as possible about how to get an effective online session. So yeah, probably the toddler and losing all my work are some of the main challenges.
I can sympathise with that. I've got a 2-year-old, so that's it comes with challenges, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So Ukramel has asked, how could you help a mood hoover? Because obviously you're saying that influences a lot of your world. So what can you do for them?
And I think that's a really good question, because actually there's often a reason, isn't there, why somebody is being a mood hoover. So is it actually that they need your support? Often with mood hoovers, it's like a habit. I just think it's become a bit of a trap and a bit of a way they are. And if you can sort of politely help them, see the benefits of being positive. I've had people on my sessions who have said, actually, that's me. I am a mood hoover. but I actually didn't realise I was until I've just thought about it now. So is there an underlying cause? You know, can you help them with something? Or actually, can you gently try to see that actually maybe that's become a bit of a habit? It happens in workplaces, doesn't it? It's a bit like Corona, isn't it? You know, it's so infectious, and it's the same in workplaces. So often it can be a cultural thing that actually somebody just needs to speak up about it, set some maybe team ways of working, you know, and try to change it that way. But it's a really good question, because some people, you know, maybe they aren't mood hoovers, maybe they just need our help and support in something.
We've got a really good question here, actually. It's very relevant at the moment from Angela, who says, where do you start with your self-belief? I mean, especially with all the things going on now. Angela says that she's been made redundant and needs to find a new job at a reasonably senior level, but I guess that's quite a challenge at the moment. So how do you maintain that self-belief while you're kind of in this period of almost waiting for things to improve?
Definitely. I think so one thing that I've used quite successfully, something called a self-belief journal. I think if you just Google self-belief journal, you would find something. And basically, there's just a couple of minutes every day, just reminding yourself of all the positive things that you have previously done and you've got to offer. So where you may get like negative self-talk or imposter syndrome, as somebody's mentioned, you basically have to reinforce your brain and give it those positive messages, making sure you're giving it that 3-to-1 basically. So something that you can do for self-belief is have a regular practice, something like a self-belief journal, that combined with meditation will work a treat for your self-belief. Meditation basically quietens down that negative self-talk, that negative voice. So a combination of those two I would recommend.
Excellent. So just having a look at some of the others we have. So Lynn has just asked one actually that's quite good, because again, it's difficult to build new networks, I guess, when we're so remote. And she's asking, how do you build your support network while we are in lockdown?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are, you know, lots of LinkedIn groups out there. The good thing at the moment is there are so many sessions like this, you know, webinars where you can start to interact with new people. For me specifically, I've got a group of friends, and I set up a specific Corona WhatsApp group. That sounds really sad. We don't just all talk about Corona, but it's about how we can help each other. So that's just the title of it. And the only things we post on there are supportive articles. So maybe that's something you can build yourself, you know, set up some sort of external network with people, or with people that you know, using whatever tools are available to us at the moment. I've met more people since going online than I did for ages face-to-face. It's really actually opened up my network. I've had some great conversations on LinkedIn.
It's a strange one, really, isn't it? Because sometimes you can feel like you're more connected, even though we are physically less connected. So yeah, it's a strange one. A good one from Sandy from earlier then. So she said, once you've set goals, it's easy to lose focus and go off track. So what tips do you have to realign your self-focus to get back onto those long-term goals?
Yeah, what I use, and you might have heard of it, Sandy. So when I set my goals, I always start with something called the Wheel of Life. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically it's a bit of a tool to have like a helicopter view of your life, and then you decide which section you want to set some goals in. Really, really important thing about setting goals is that you make them, I know a lot of people say, oh, you know, make your goals massive. And it's important you have a massive vision, but actually what puts people off is that they make their goals too big and they struggle to do the small steps needed. I had someone on my online session, it was around probably like 3 months ago at the start of lockdown. And I think she thought she was going to be on some sort of lockdown boot camp, and she was going to emerge sort of butterfly-like at the other end. So she set these massive goals. And then she came on the follow-up session where we measured progress, and she was so deflated. And basically, you know, we're in a pandemic, aren't we? We're in a really difficult time. So we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to set achievable goals. We have to make sure that they're goals that we can do little and often. And the really important thing is about goals, if you go off track, just be kind to yourself and get back on track the next day. You know, we can often have this all or nothing mindset where we think, right, that's it now. You know, I said I wasn't going to drink in the week and I have done, so that's it now. Actually, just start again the next day. It's fine. You know, try not to go into that trap of that all or nothing mindset.
And I think final one actually is one's come into the comments section that has come from Harriet. He says about struggling to build habits long term, and I guess especially at the moment with the pandemic and lockdown, I guess setting habits that work now in this environment can soon kind of disappear. I guess, when we all get back to closer to a normal, I guess. So what would your tips be in order to transfer the positives from now into kind of the new world when we finally get there?
Yeah, so in my sessions, I do a lot of reflection activities where I get people to reflect on, like you just said, what positives can we take from it? What things from this new world do I want to take into, going forward? I think often, we're just like on a bit of a treadmill, and we don't stop enough to reflect. So, if anybody does want a couple of my reflection activities, I'm happy to send them out. But where people have got a lot of benefit from my sessions is actually thinking, right, what have I got from this? What do I want to take forward? And just to see things in a bit of a positive light. If you struggle building long-term habits, I would recommend a book called The Compound Effect. And it is just basically what I've talked about. So it's about the importance of small habits, but done consistently. I've completely forgot the author, but if you Google The Compound Effect, if anybody does want to make small but consistent habits, it's a brilliant book, a brilliant place to start.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think we've gone through the vast majority of the questions. Apologies if I've missed yours. I think we've covered most of them there. So what we will do is we will put the recording of the webinar today will go onto the Wholesale News website later this week. But there's also a whole suite of other stuff that's kind of through with the Women in Wholesale Take Control series. So we've had a new vlog go up there today about Zoom. There are a couple more things that are already there, and they're going to continue to be updated through the next couple of months. So there's lots of stuff coming. I think Elliot and the rest of the Women in Wholesale team are doing an awful lot of good stuff at the moment. So it's worth having a look. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. And I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye now.